Has your nervous system gone off? No, well, you're not triggered. That's a symptom and a strategy for something. I want to know what's driving it, what underlies it. Their state can change from being completely okay to completely frozen, disconnected, not there, unable to move, speak, hear, anything. Hello everybody, I'm Catriona Morten. I'm a sensory-motor psychotherapist, and today I'd like to talk to you about the connection between addiction and trauma. Before I get into that, if you're enjoying these videos, then please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, because it really helps us get our information and our message out there to loads more people. Most of the people that I have seen over the years, and that's been many people, have had or have had in the past some form of addiction. I mean, it can take many guises. It can be woven into so many different things, as well as the very obvious things. I'm going to put self-harming in that bracket as well, because it kind of fulfills the same purpose for trauma survivors. When we're traumatized, as I've spoken about many times, it takes our entire nervous system with it. You know, something fires off in our amygdala and bang, it's like we're fired up, and whatever the trauma was that has caused this comes flooding back, whether or not that's in flashback form or intrusive memory form or just a felt experience. We relive it in some way, and it's horrendous. For some people, they're almost in a kind of constant state of revving up. For a lot of my clients, you know, they're super hypervigilant. They're taking in information all the time. They can't shut off, they can't relax, they can't go and do yoga classes and just manage to kind of still that nervous system. And, you know, when we're talking about the nervous system, we've got our vagus nerve that, you know, two parts of it runs all the way through the body, has a huge impact on our social engagement, our heart rate, our lung capacity, as well as a whole host of other things. We've got a sympathetic nervous system. Now, when we're in fight, flight, freeze, state of high anxiety, super hypervigilant, not feeling safe, then we're in our sympathetic. And for some people, it's almost a constant state, and it's exhausting. It's not a pleasant place to be. When we're in our parasympathetic, that's when our out-breath is longer. We're, you know, able to let go an awful lot of these things. All the cortisol, the adrenaline is able to just kind of come down. We discharge the energy, and that's when we feel safe, relaxed, and peaceful. For a lot of people with trauma, that's something that is rarely afforded to them. And they live in this constant state, and it can feel almost impossible to kind of switch that engine off. There's many kinds of addictions that will do that. They will alter the state. Cocaine is a very fast acting shift of state, and it can take someone from that place of things feeling unbearable to it suddenly shifts. There's a reason why people with trauma have real issues with addiction, because it helps them manage the state they're in. The reason I put self-harming in there is because for a lot of people, when I ask them what happens immediately afterwards, they'll give a description of the parasympathetic coming down. It's almost as though it's a way of, instead of your sympathetic just careering up and it's like, I don't know how to get out of this, it kicks it into touch, it kicks it into place, and it allows the parasympathetic to actually come on board and to bring us down a little bit, because it's not healthy, it's not good, it's not sustainable to be at that high level all the time. And so addiction plays a huge part. Alcohol is an inhibitor. So a lot of the things that we're terrified to do, alcohol kind of turns that terror off, that inhibitor, and it allows us to do the things that would normally not be able to do, that wouldn't be possible. You know, Dutch courage. It literally does give someone with that terrible social anxiety, senses of agoraphobia, the ability to be able to do it. Now, when we become dependent on these things, these drugs, these addictions to help us function, then it's really, really hard to just stop. An awful lot of services, they have in place these guidelines, and it's for protection. A lot of agencies, they kind of operate on a level of fear, and they try and put safeguards into place, and I completely understand why. I'm not criticising that at all. But for an awful lot of people with addiction and underlying trauma, then they can't get access to these services that state you cannot be using if you're coming into the service, if you're going to access this service. Some places get people to sign self-harm contracts, addiction contracts that I promise not to use, I promise not to, while I'm in this service. And, when I ran the trauma clinic, we had the same things in place. There was no drinking bans and there was all kinds of things. And I get why, from a place of safety and being able to do the work. But for a lot of people, it's like, okay, so let me get this straight. I am struggling. My nervous system is out of control. I'm getting flashbacks, I'm getting body trauma playing out all the time. And you want to take away the thing that actually makes me function? It can seem like an impossible task. The way that I treat people with addiction, I'm not putting that as the forefront, because that's a symptom and a strategy for something. I want to know what's driving it, what underlies it. If all we do is go into an addiction program, yes, we might have many ways and things that we can do that help us give the addiction up, to stop it coming. But if the underlying cause is trauma, then the next time that gets triggered, then very often there's a relapse. And there's a relapse because the underlying issues haven't been dealt with. We only look at the symptoms. If we're bleeding profusely and all we do is stuff a load of plasters and bandages on it and don't look at what lies underneath, well then it's not going to solve what's underneath. We have to be able to understand, if somebody's got addiction, is there trauma that lies underneath that? Because if we can take the heat and the sting out of the trauma, if we can process and heal from the trauma so it isn't firing the nervous system up, then we don't have such a need for the addiction. It still might be difficult to work on the addiction because it's addictive, but it's so much easier when it isn't being fueled by the trauma and the nervous system, the cortisol and the adrenaline that comes up with it. There's a massive surge, and when we get a trigger, and I've said before, that word is really overly used. Oh, that's triggering me. Is your nervous system gone off? No, well, you're not triggered. Sorry, you've just been maybe offended. Bit of a beef for me, because when someone is triggered, their nervous system goes bang. I can accidentally trigger people sometimes in sessions because the amount of triggers that they have might be huge and almost unavoidable. Well, they're walking around being triggered all the time. And it goes in a nanosecond. Their state can change from being completely okay to completely frozen, disconnected, not there, unable to move, speak, hear anything. Or they can get incredibly agitated and have a massive urge to just get out and flee. And it happens before any cognitive thought comes in. In fact, the thoughts are bypassed. When our system goes off, it's so difficult to think your way out of that one, to even realise what's happening, because it feels like you're back fighting for your life, that this stuff is overwhelming. And if substances, if behaviours are used as a way of managing that, then if all we do is take that away, then what else have we got? When I'm working with addiction, I make sure that, one, the trauma is processed as quickly and as effectively as we can, but also there's other coping mechanisms in place. There's other things that we can do that might give us the same resolution, which is usually a sense of safety, a sense of grounding, being back in our body and getting some access to our parasympathetic nervous system. And there's many different ways of doing that and accessing the parasympathetic. If you find one that works for you, brilliant, treasure it, use it, because it can be a really good thing in your toolbox. I help people find ones that are suitable for them, but it's, you know, a really good idea to go away, watch videos, look at techniques, do things, Tai Chi, breathing methods, all kinds of things. But only when we can do that and be more comfortable, feel safer, not have our nervous system going off, is it possible to start thinking about working on the addiction, the thing that's actually often being seen as the problem. And it will be problematic. You know, addictions cause all kinds of problems for people. But if there's trauma lying underneath it, it's either just going to keep jumping from one, you know, different one to another. So it can feel like we're playing whack-a-mole. Oh yeah, I've stopped drinking, but now I'm doing this. Oh, I've stopped that and now I'm doing that. It's like, okay, right, we are playing whack-a-mole. So what's the driver? What's underneath all of this? If it's trauma, deal with it, process it, heal from it. So I hope that's helpful, useful for yourself and, you know, your loved ones around you. And if you've enjoyed this video, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye!